The colony ship Endurance drifted silently in the black void near Starcade X9, its engines dead and lights flickering. Captain Roy Bennett gripped his chair, staring at the warning screens. Red symbols flashed everywhere. Oxygen levels were falling. Heat was leaking away into space. Behind him, young scientist Maya Cole whispered, "The reactor's gone cold, Roy. We can't fix it." Her hands shook as she checked the numbers again. They were stranded, with no way to call for help. Suddenly, alarms screamed. Tiny, sharp-shaped machines swarmed out of the dark like metal insects. "Reavers," Roy shouted. Everyone knew those killer drones. They stripped ships bare, leaving no survivors. The Endurance's weak shields trembled as the drones attacked, firing lasers that cut into the hull. Metal screamed, or hissed out into space. Roy ordered the crew to escape pods, but he knew it was hopeless. The Reavers would hunt them down one by one. Then a light, a massive ship, smooth and glowing like a seashell, dropped out of nowhere. It moved like something alive, curving around the dying star. No metal, no engines, just warm, pulsing light. Before Roy could speak, the strange ship fired beams of pure green energy. They swept through the Reavers, turning them to dust. In seconds, the drones were gone. A screen flickered on Roy's command desk. Two figures appeared. One was a tall woman with silver hair and eyes like calm water. A queen, Roy thought instantly. She held herself like rulers from old Earth stories. Beside her stood a broad-shouldered man, his face hard as stone, wearing a sharp uniform. He glared at the humans. "They're pests, Your Grace," he said. "Like the Reavers. Wipe them out now." The queen shook her head. She looked at Roy, and her voice flowed into the room, soft but clear. "Your ship is broken. You are afraid." Roy nodded, too stunned to hide the truth. Maya stepped forward, her voice trembling. "Please, we just wanted to find a new home." The queen closed her eyes. A ripple of light passed over her. "I see your past. Wars, hunger, endless running, but also courage. Gardens grown in deserts, children singing in ruins." She turned to the angry man. "They deserved kindness, Commander." He slammed a fist on his unseen console. "Kindness is a flaw. They'll bring chaos. Let me end them." The queen went quiet. Roy held his breath. He saw death in the commander's eyes. But the queen touched a crystal hanging at her neck. "No," she said firmly. "Long ago, someone showed me mercy when I had none left. I will not forget." A beam of light shot from her ship to the Endurance. Roy's screens blinked alive. Oxygen numbers rose. Heat spread through the frozen decks. "We're healing." Maya gasped. Then, a small pod docked with their ship. Inside lay a glowing sphere full of swirling greens and blues. "This is a world seed," said the queen. "Planted in dead earth. It will grow soil, water, for us to home." Maya touched the sphere with wonder. "Why give this to us?" The queen smiled sadly. "Because you try. Even when things are dark, that is rare." She looked at her commander, who stood silent, fists clenched. "Go now, before others in my fleet question my orders." As the strange ship began to fade, the commander leaned close to the screen. His whisper felt like ice down Roy's spine. "Mercy breeds weakness, humans. Remember that when your end comes." Then they vanished. The Endurance floated alone again, but whole. Roy sank into his chair. Crew members cheered, hugging each other. Maya cradled the world Zed like a child. "They saved us, Roy, just because it was right." Roy watched the stars where the glowing ship had been. He thought of the commander's cold eyes. "They gave us a future," he said softly. "But that man thinks we're weak. Thinks she was weak for helping us." He stood up, straight and sure. "Let's make sure they learn how strong mercy can be." Far away, the queen watched the human ship shrink on her screen. Her commander stood stiff beside her. "You wasted power on fools," he said. She didn't look away from the screen, or planted a seed that will outlive us all. But in the shadows, the commander's hand curled into a fist. He would not forget, and he would make sure the humans regretted this day. 100 years passed. The gift from the glowing ship changed everything. Where Mars had been a cold red desert, cities now bloomed under giant glass domes. Rich green forests breathed life into the thin air. Blue lakes sparkled. This was all thanks to the World Zed, the glowing sphere the Queen had given them. Humans spread out, building homes on 12 new worlds. They called this time the Great Bloom. On Mars, the capital city gleamed. Tall towers touched the sky. People lived safe lives. Few remembered the desperate flight of the Endurance or the terrifying Reavers. For them, peace was normal. Statues stood in parks, showing the Queen from the glowing ship. They called her the compassionate stranger. Children learned about her kindness in school. In a quiet room high in the defense tower, General Helen Vance studied star maps. Her face was lined, her eyes sharp. She remembered old wars, the fear before the bloom. She never forgot they owed their peace to an act of mercy from beings they barely knew. Her assistant, a young scientist named Leo Fisher, rushed in. He looked pale. "General Vance," Leo said, his voice tight. "We picked up a signal. Deep space. Old encryption. ... But matching the patterns from the Endurance logs." Helen turned slowly. "The strangers?" Leo nodded. He tapped a screen. A harsh, broken message filled the air. It wasn't words, but raw feeling poured into sound. Terror, despair, a plea echoing across the stars. Underneath, faint images flickered. A beautiful world covered in swirling gray storms. Strange ships fighting hopelessly against vast, shadowy shapes that consumed light itself. "They're dying," Leo whispered. "Their homeworld, something called the Null Swarm, is eating it. Their fleets are shattered." The message. It's a final cry for help. Helen stared at the images. The swirling gray storms reminded her of the Reavers, but infinitely worse. The shadowy shapes moved with chilling hunger. She thought of the Queen's calm eyes, the gift that saved humanity. She thought of the angry commander's warning. "Mercy breeds weakness. We have to go," Helen stated, her voice like stone. Leo looked shocked. "General, the Council, they'll never agree. It's across the galaxy. The energy cost alone." "I know the Council," Helen interrupted. She walked to the window, looking down at the thriving city. "They see peace. They see comfort. They don't see the debt." She turned back, her gaze fierce. "Get me the fleet readiness reports. Every ship capable of a long jump. Now." The next day, Helen stood before the Earth Council. The chamber was grand, filled with representatives from the 12 worlds. She showed them the distress signal, the images of the dying world. Silence fell heavy. Council leader Adams, a man who only knew the bloom, spoke first. "General Vance, this is tragic. But these ... beings, they live impossibly far. Sending a fleet, it would take years. It would drain resources needed here. We've colonies to protect, people to feed." Another counselor, a woman named Chen, added, "We honor their past kindness, built statues. But sending our sons and daughters into unknown danger? For strangers, we don't know what that ... swarm truly is. It could follow our ships back here." Helen clenched her fists behind her back. "They saved us when we were adrift and dying. They asked for nothing. They gave us the means to build this." She gestured sharply towards the city beyond the windows. "Now they face extinction. Are we so comfortable we forget what mercy looks like? What it means?" Adam sighed. "Mercy is noble, General. But responsibility is greater. Our duty is to humanity. We cannot risk everything on a hopeless rescue mission for a species we encountered once a century ago. The answer is no. The Council will not authorize this expedition." The vote was swift. Overwhelmingly against. Helen stood rigid as the decision echoed in the chamber. Disappointment, cold and sharp, settled in her chest, but beneath it burned a hotter fire. Later that night, deep within the secure Mars shipyards, Helen walked through echoing hangars. Massive warships designed for defense loomed in the dim light. Technicians moved quietly. Leo Fisher waited beside one ship, its hull marked Dauntless. "It's done, General," Leo said quietly. "Commanders Rhodes, West, and Carter are aboard their ships. Cruiser volunteers only. They know the Council refused. They know the risks." Helen looked at the faces of the men and women moving supplies. Young faces, old faces, determined faces. They had seen the signal too, remembered the stories. How many? she asked. 23 ships, General Leo replied. The Dauntless, the Resolute, the Keeper's Oath. The best long-range jumpers we have. Supplies for 5 years, combat ready, but it's not the full fleet. It's what we could prepare quietly. Helen nodded. It was a gamble, a stolen fleet, a mission against orders. If they failed, it would be disaster. If they succeeded, maybe it would change nothing for the comfortable worlds below, but it would be right. She boarded the Dauntless. Commander Pete Rhodes, a steady man with calm eyes, met her on the bridge. Ready when you are, General? Helen looked at the main screen showing the swirling vortex of the planned hyperspace jump point. The signal from the stranger's world still echoed in her mind. That raw terror, that fading hope. She thought of the angry commander's sneer. Mercy breeds weakness. She would show him strength born of compassion. Set course, Commander Rhodes, Helen Vance ordered, her voice cutting through the tense quiet of the bridge. Maximum jump. For Verdantia. The powerful engines of the 23 ships hummed to life. Lights flared across their hulls. Silently, without fanfare or official blessing, the small fleet slipped away from Mars' orbit. They plunged into the swirling chaos of hyperspace, heading towards a dying star and a debt that demanded payment. Behind them, the comfortable lights of Mars glowed. Unaware of the stolen fleet racing towards legend or oblivion, the stolen fleet raced through hyperspace. Inside the swirling tunnel of light and color, time felt strange. Days blurred into weeks. Commander Pete Rhodes stood on the bridge of the Dauntless, watching the chaos outside the thick windows. This region of space was unstable. They called it shatter space. Gravity pulled in wild directions. Strange energy flashes lit up the dark like lightning. Report, General Helen Vance ordered. She walked onto the bridge, her face tight with worry. 3 ships lost, General Rhodes answered grimly. The Resolute and 2 supply carriers. The gravity tide ripped them apart. No survivors. He pointed at the screen. Jagged lines of force twisted across the map. It's getting worse. The path ahead. It's like broken glass. Helen nodded. Every lost ship was a blow. Every lost life weighed on her. Turning back wasn't an option. The distress signal from the stranger's world still echoed in her mind, that fading cry for help. Suddenly, Pete Rhodes gasped. He grabbed his head, his knuckles white. Images flooded his mind, sharp and painful. A beautiful green world covered in creeping gray rot. Crystal cities crumbling into dust. Warriors with shimmering skin, fighting shadowy monsters, falling one by one. Silver-haired queen, standing tall but trembling, her hands raised as if holding back a storm. Raised a voice whispered directly into his thoughts. Why? Come, we are already lost. Rhodes staggered. Helen caught his arm. Commander, what is it? It's her. Rhodes breathed, his eyes wide. The Queen. She's showing me. Their world is dying. The Null Swarm is everywhere. Her warriors are buying time with their lives. She feels us coming. She doesn't understand why we're here. He looked at Helen, haunted. She's weakening, General. Fast. Helen's jaw tightened. Can you talk back? Tell her we're coming? Rhodes closed his eyes, focusing. He thought of the Endurance, adrift and helpless. He thought of the Queen's gift, the world's Zed that bloomed deserts into forests. He pushed these thoughts outwards, a message without words. Hold on. We are close. A wave of surprise came back, mixed with deep sadness. The Queen's voice echoed again in Rhodes's mind, clearer this time. Filled with sorrow, you cross the void for those who showed you a single kindness. You throw your lives into darkness. It is not logical. Your people thrive. Why risk extinction for us? Rhodes opened his eyes. He looked straight ahead as if seeing the Queen herself. His voice was quiet but firm, because legends aren't born from calculations, Your Grace. They're forged in fire, ... and in mercy repaid. A moment of silence filled the bridge. Then, a feeling washed over Rhodes. Not words, but warmth. Like gratitude, deep and profound. The image of the Queen faded, leaving only her final thought. Hurry. The journey through shatter space became a nightmare. 2 more ships vanished, torn apart by unseen forces. The remaining 18 ships pushed forward, Engines straining, crew members worked in tense silence, faces pale but determined. They knew what was at stake. They knew the council had abandoned this mission. They were doing it anyway, for honor, for the debt. Sergeant Nina West checked her gear in the Dauntless's armory. She was young, tough, and chosen for the ground mission if they made it. She sharpened her combat knife, the metal singing in the dim light. "Think we'll get there in time, Sarge?" asked a young soldier named Eli. Nina didn't look up. "Doesn't matter if we do or not, kid. We're going." That's the point. She thought of the Queen's face from the history lessons. The compassionate stranger. "Hold on, lady," Nina thought fiercely. "We're coming." Finally, after 3 long months, the lead navigator shouted, exiting hyperspace in 10 seconds. "Prepare for transition." The swirling colors of Shatterspace vanished. The Dauntless lurched violently as it dropped back into normal space. Alarms blared instantly, harsh and urgent. The main screen flickered, then cleared. Helen Vance froze. Rhodes's breath caught in his throat. Before them hung the beautiful green world they had seen in the visions, Verdanthia. But it was half swallowed by the creeping gray rot. And surrounding the planet, blocking their path completely, was an impossible number of ships. Not ships like theirs, not even like the old Reavers. These were horrors made real. Jagged black shapes that seemed to absorb light. They looked like holes ripped in space itself. Thousands of them. Tens of thousands. They moved silently, hungrily, towards the planet. This was the Null Swarm. "Battle stations," Rhodes roared, snapping the crew out of their shock. "All ships, shields to maximum. Weapons ready." "Right." The comms officer's voice shook. "General." Massive energy spike from the swarm. "They've seen us." The screen, hundreds of the black ships detached from the main force. They turned smoothly, silently, towards the tiny human fleet. Cold dread filled the bridge. They were hopelessly outnumbered. They'd jumped straight into hell. Helen Vance stood tall. She looked at the monstrous fleet, then at the green world beyond, fighting for its last breath. She thought of the Queen, weak, but still holding on. She thought of the angry commander's sneer a century ago. "Mercy breeds weakness. Signal all ships," Helen commanded, her voice cutting through the fear. "Form defensive line Delta. Protect the Keeper's Oath and the ground teams at all costs." "We didn't come this far to run." She met Rhodes's eyes. "For the compassionate stranger, for Earth, open fire." The first blinding beams of human weapons lanced out into the dark, striking the leading edge of the Null Swarm. The battle for Verdanthia had begun. The stolen fleet, the Legion of Mercy, faced oblivion head-on. Silence vanished. The space around Verdanthia exploded with noise and light. The human fleet, 18 ships against thousands of dark horrors, fired everything they had. Bright beams of energy sliced into the approaching Null Swarm ships. Explosions flared like tiny stars against the blackness. But for every swarm ship destroyed, 10 more surged forward. Inside the Dauntless, General Helen Vance gripped the command rail. Screens flashed red as enemy fire hammered their shields. "Concentrate fire on the left flank," she shouted over the alarms. "Don't let them surround the Keeper's Oath." The Keeper's Oath carried the precious cargo, the reverse-engineered world Zed. Not for growing life, but for stopping the swarm. Sergeant Nina West and her team were aboard, ready to land on the dying planet. Commander Pete Rhodes fought the ship through the chaos. "Shields at 60%, General. The Valiant is gone." Direct hit. His voice was tight with strain. The swarm ships moved like liquid shadow, hard to target, their weapons draining shields and energy with terrifying speed. On the planet below, the silver-haired Queen felt the human ships arrive. She stood in a crumbling tower, her hands raised, pouring her strength into a weakening shield protecting her last city. Her people huddled below, their faces etched with fear. The creeping gray rot of the Null Swarm ate at the edges of the shield. She felt the fierce, desperate energy of the human attack above. They fight, she thought, a flicker of awe piercing her exhaustion. Against impossible odds, they fight for us. Suddenly, a sharp, familiar presence touched her mind. The first commander. He was nearby, leading warriors in a fierce battle against swarm creatures that had broken through the shield near the city's edge. His mental voice was ragged, filled with pain and fury. They came. The humans. Why? The Queen sent him the image of Commander Rhodes' words. Legends are unborn from calculations, and the feeling of their reckless courage. A wave of shock, then something else. Shame came from the commander. He didn't speak again, but the Queen felt his focus shift, his fighting becoming even more desperate. Above, the situation worsened. General Vance, the sensor officer, yelled, "Swarm ships are breaking through. They're heading for the Keeper's Oath." Helen acted fast. "All ships, cover the Oath." "Rhodes, get Sergeant West's team down there now. Use the Dauntless as a shield if you have to." The Dauntless veered sharply, placing itself between the attacking swarm ships and the smaller Keeper's Oath. Enemy fire slammed into its hull. Lights flickered, shields failing. Rhodes reported grimly. On the Oath, Nina West felt the ship shudder. "Drop point in 30 seconds, the pilot shouted. "Brace for rough landing." Nina checked her team. Eli looked scared but held his rifle steady. "Remember the plan?" Nina barked. "Get the World Z device to the central spire. Activate it. Nothing else matters." The landing bay doors opened. Swirling gray dust, and the stench of decay filled the air. The Oath plunged through the failing planetary shield, dodging streaks of dark energy fired from the ground. It crashed hard onto a plaza near the base of the Queen's Tower. The impact threw Nina against the wall. "Go, go, go," she screamed, scrambling up. They burst out into hell. The once beautiful city was a ruin. Strange shadowy creatures slithered through the streets, attacking the last offenders. Warriors with shimmering skin fighting with crystal blades. The air crackled with energy and screams. Nina's team fought their way forward, firing at the shadow creatures. Heading towards the towering spire where the Queen stood. Near the spire's base, a huge swarm creature, like a shifting pillar of darkness, smashed through a group of warriors. Standing before it, his back to Nina, was the broad-shouldered first commander. He fought with terrifying ferocity, his crystal blade flashing, but he was badly wounded. The shadow creature lashed out. The commander was thrown back, landing hard near Nina's feet. He looked up, his face bloody, his eyes wide with surprise and pain. He saw Nina recognize the human uniform. He saw the heavy case her team carried, the World Z device. The shadow creature loomed over them, ready to strike. The commander met Nina's eyes. For a second, she saw the angry man from a century ago. Then, something changed. He looked towards the tower where his queen stood. He looked back at Nina. His voice, rough and weak, cut through the noise. "Finish it, for her." With a roar that seemed to tear his lungs apart, the commander pushed himself up. He didn't attack the creature. Instead, he threw himself at it, wrapping his arms around the shifting darkness. His body began to glow with fierce white light. "No!" Nina yelled, understanding too late. The commander exploded. The blinding light consumed the shadow creature, vaporizing it instantly and blasting a hole in the attacking swarm nearby. The shockwave threw Nina back, shielding her face. When the light faded, only scorched earth remained where the commander had stood. Silence hung for a split second. Then Nina was moving. "Eli, the device! To the spire!" Now, she scrambled up, ignoring her bruises, firing at new shadows emerging from the smoke. The commander's sacrifice had bought them precious seconds. They reached the base of the spire. Technicians frantically hooked up the World Z device, a complex machine humming with captured energy. "It's ready, Sarge," Eli shouted, "but it needs a link. A living mind to control the energy flow, the manual says. ... It'll burn them out." Nina stared at the device. A living mind. A death sentence. Her eyes flicked towards the tower top, where the Queen stood, her light visibly fading. The shield above flickered wildly. Back on the Dauntless, Helen Vance saw the explosion on the planet. She saw the Keeper's Oath signal flare. The device was in place, but she also saw the swarm fleet, sensing victory, pressing harder. Her ships were being torn apart. A desperate plan formed. "Rhodes," she commanded, her voice raw. "New course, all remaining ships. Full thrust towards the star. Draw them away from the planet. Target the sun's corona with everything we've got left." Rhodes understood instantly. A supernova. Trigger the star to explode, taking the swarm with it. A suicide run, my general. He input the course. The battered Dauntless, along with the few surviving ships, turned away from Veridantia and flew straight towards the system's blazing sun. The massive swarm fleet, sensing the movement, followed the sudden retreat, a dark wave chasing the tiny, defiant lights. Helen Vance watched the sun grow larger on the screen. "Hold on, Sergeant," she whispered, not knowing if Nina could hear. "Do it now. Blow." On Verdantia, Nina West stood before the humming World Z device, knowing it needed a life to work. Knowing the Queen above was the only mind strong enough to guide its power. The planet shook as the swarm closed in. Time had run out. Nina West stared at the humming World Z device. It needed a life. Her mind raced. The Queen above was the only one strong enough, but guiding the device would kill her. The ground shook as more swarm creatures closed in. Eli looked at her, terrified. "Sarge, what do we do?" Before Nina could answer, a new voice cut through the chaos. "Stand aside, Sergeant." An older woman, her face lined but eyes sharp, pushed past the soldiers. She wore a simple scientist suit. Dr. Maya Cole. Nina blinked. "Dr. Cole, but you were on the Dauntless." "I transferred," Maya said calmly, her gaze fixed on the World Z device. "When I learned what it needed," she walked right up to the humming machine. "This was my life's work. I turned her gift into a weapon. It's only right I finish it, but it will kill you," Nina protested. Maya touched the device. It pulsed brighter. "Everything dies, Sergeant, even stars. Make my death mean something." She looked towards the top of the spire, where the Queen stood fighting. "Tell her, thank you, for the gardens." Then Maya placed her hands firmly on the control nodes. "Activate it now." Eli hesitated, then slammed his hand on the activation switch. Energy surged. Blue-white light exploded from the device, engulfing Maya Cole. She didn't scream. She stood tall, her body outlined in blinding power. The light flowed through her, directed by her will, deep into the planet below their feet. On the spire top, the Queen gasped. She felt the immense power surge downwards, not outwards. It wasn't attacking the swarm. It was anchoring, healing. The creeping gray rot shuddered. The trembling ground grew still. The Queen poured her own fading strength into the wave Maya sent, guiding it to the planet's wounded heart. Together, they wove a net of pure life energy, a shield against the swarm's decay. The gray rot stopped spreading. High above, General Helen Vance watched the Dauntless's screens. The planet below flared with sudden, brilliant light. The gray sickness halted. "She did it," Vance whispered. Relief was short-lived. The Null Swarm fleet, enraged by the planet's defiance, turned its full fury on the remaining human ships.
Ow.
The Dauntless shook violently. "Hull breach on Deck 3, Rhodes shouted. "We're losing power." Vance looked at the system's sun, blazing huge and close now. Her small fleet had led the main swarm force right into its corona. "All ships," Vance commanded, her voice clear and strong over the din. "Full power to forward shields. Target the star's instability point. Fire everything we have left. On my mark. ... Fire." Every surviving human ship unleashed its final barrage, not at the swarm, but at the churning surface of the star itself. Beams of energy, missiles, even the kinetic force of the ships ramming forward, struck the precise weak spot science had predicted. For a terrible second, nothing happened. Then the star flared. A wave of unimaginable light and heat erupted outwards, faster than thought. It washed over the human ships first, vaporizing them instantly. Helen Vance saw only blinding white. Commander Rhodes thought of the green forests of Mars. Then, nothing. The wave hit the massive Null Swarm fleet next. The dark ships built to consume matter and energy met something too vast, too primal to consume. They flickered like shadows in a noon sun and vanished. The wave continued, out past the star's edge, then slowly faded. Where thousands of swarm ships had been, only empty space remained. On Verdantia, the light faded from the World Z device. Dr. Maya Cole was gone, only fine ash drifting where she stood. The device itself was dark and silent. Above the planetary shield, strengthened by Maya's sacrifice and the Queen's guidance, held firm against the fading shockwave of the distant supernova. The Queen lowered her hands. She was weak, near collapse. She looked down at the plaza where Maya had stood, where the angry commander had sacrificed himself. She felt the new, strong heartbeat deep within her world, the anchor Maya had created. The null swarm on the surface writhed and dissolved, cut off from its source. Her people began to emerge, staring in wonder at the clearing sky. The queen reached out with her mind, weak but clear, touching every surviving Silthery. She showed them the human ships arriving against impossible odds. She showed them the commander's final act of honor. She showed them Maya Cole, standing tall as the light consumed her, saving their world. She showed them the human fleet flying bravely into the fire of the star to destroy the enemy. Remember the Queen's scent, her mental voice filled with awe and sorrow? They showed us compassion once long ago. And when darkness came for us, they repaid that kindness. ... with legend. Then, exhausted beyond measure, the silver-haired queen closed her eyes. She did not die, but she slept, her body finally resting after holding back the storm for so long. A century later, on a renewed, vibrant Verdanthia, a young Silthery child sat under a glowing tree. "Tell the story again," she begged her elder. The elder smiled. "Very well. Long ago, when the Great Hunger came, strangers appeared from beyond the stars. They were not like us, but they fought for us. Their leader, a wise woman with fire in her spirit, flew her ship into the sun to save us. Their bravest warrior gave his life to protect one of theirs on the ground. And their life weaver, a woman who understood the heart of worlds, joined her strength with our sleeping queens to heal our home. They called themselves humans. We call them ... the Legion Legends. On Mars, now a world of forests and seas, people walked in a quiet park. They stopped before a large statue. It showed two women, one with silver hair and calm eyes, the other older, with a scientist's determined gaze. Their stone hands were clasped together. At the base, words were carved. They showed us compassion once, and forged a legend that outlives stars. The wind rustled the leaves. Somewhere children laughed. The legend lived on.